Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Welcome to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage, the Vault Series. Today's show is an interview that we shot back in 2004 at one of my Nashville guitar shops. It was with the great Motown bassist Bob Babbitt. Bob talks about how he became a musician as a very young child and how he became a member of the Funk Brothers. Hope you enjoy it. If you do, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Once again, Motown great, the late Bob Babbitt.
The first band I was in, we had two saxes, bass, drums, no chord instrument, no guitar or piano, and two singers. And the name of the band was The Counts. So it's kind of funny. I don't know, maybe you're going to probably edit this out. Because my grandmother asked me, says, Bobby, what's the name of the band you play? I said, The Counts. She says, The Counts. I said, no, Grandma, The Counts. She said, The Counts.
Oh God!
And then that led to this Royal Tone band, and we had some records. They had a couple big hits, and then I played with some different guys around town, bar bands, and I was starting to do some sessions.
Now, how old were you there?
Well, I don't. At first, I wasn't old enough to go into the bars. I remember when we finally got to that age, some of us. We went in. That was it. Then.
Oh yeah, we did too.
Yeah, that was it. Let's go. Let's do it. But at the same time, I was meeting people around town that were more into the recording thing too, and it was kind of a combination for a pretty long time.
Did you know from a very early age that music was something different, special for you, or did you just kind of keep rolling with the flow?
I didn't realize that. I was fortunate enough on the upright bass to learn the reading process. And in Pittsburgh, they had something called a Pittsburgh Symphony Junior, which consisted of the better high school players. And I was in that for 3 years, so I must have been doing something right there. I feel I had a good lock on the reading thing, which, by the way, to me was one of the most important things in the studio, because the first session that I did for this black-owned studio, which eventually became Motown Studio B, by the way, it's called Golden World. The very first session, on the session there was an arranger, and he gave me a chart. And on the chart, he actually wrote out the introduction, notation, introduction, and he wrote the bridge out. But on the verse and the choruses, was just a chord chart. But I always felt that if I couldn't read that introduction, that bridge, I may have not got called back.
Right.
I probably wouldn't have. Because I saw some guys, some local guys, that friends of mine, great musicians, that came in, but they couldn't read. I didn't even realize they couldn't read. And as a result, they couldn't use them.
That's even makes it more amazing to me, though. I talk about musicians who are blind, and how incredible, they just, hear it and then do it,
I'll tell you what, I've worked with some blind musicians that made me feel like I was stupid.
Right.
Because I couldn't get it as fast as them.
Right.
Boom.
When did you start with Motown? What year?
67.
Do you remember the first session you did there?
Yeah, I was working live with Stevie Wonder. What happened was the Golden World studio, I eventually became part of the Golden World, the main bass player over there for the sessions. And at some point in 66, end of 66, early 67, it went up for sale. And we were hoping that Atlantic, there was rumors Atlantic or CBS may be buying it, and we'd keep that thing going, but Barry, Motown bought it, and it became Studio B. So in the meantime, we still had work around from some of the other independent studios around Detroit. But I got called to work with Stevie Wonder live. So it was a couple, that's when he was just working mainly in the summers, because he was still in school. And one day I got a phone call from Motown to do a session, and it was for Stevie. And the first song I cut there, we did a cover of the Beatle record called We Can Work It Out, which was a big hit for him. And I remember going to listen to the playback on that of that song after we recorded, and I said, God, man, this is unbelievable. Especially the bass sound. They had an incredible bass sound there. They had some.
You went, that's me?
Yeah, I get it. Well, you know, they knew how to work with the musician. A lot of engineers don't work with the musician, and as a result, sometimes it could be detrimental to your career. There was a studio in New York we used to do a lot of jingles at, that there was about 3 or 4 bass players that were hesitant to go to because they never got a good bass sound.
What were some of the songs other than that one that you played on that?
Out of the Motown
Yeah,
thing, yeah. There was a lot of songs out of Detroit, but the Motown, when I started working over there, was the We Can Work It Out, Stevie's Signed, Sealed, Delivered.
I love it.
From Marvin Gaye, Mercy, Mercy Me, and Inner City Blues. And then some Temptation stuff like Ball of Confusion. I missed the Papa Was a Rolling Stone session, but I did a record after that really was, it just sold just as many, or if not more records than Papa Rolling Stone, but people don't seem to know about it. It was called Masterpiece, on the same, concept of Papa's Rolling Stone. And there were did War, Edwin Starr, Touch Me in the Morning, Diana Ross, If I Was Your Woman, Gladys Knight. And then when I actually left Motown and moved to the East Coast, I ended up recording a lot of the Spinners, about 6 or 7, who left Motown as well and went with Atlantic. And Gladys Knight went with Buddha. I did Midnight Train to Georgia, which a lot of people thought that was kind of Motown. But that was I think that was her first hit outside of Motown.
New York?
Actually, it was New Jersey, a place called Venture Sound, Somerville, New Jersey. And we did a couple more of Gladys's records out of there that followed that. I think there was a record called Where Peaceful Waters Flow. There was a record, there was another one. It was a really good record. I Feel a Song in My Heart. And then started to do a lot of things more around New York. I did some stuff for Main Ingredient, a record called Just Don't Want to Be Lonely. I did a couple Barry Manilow records. I did the record from the movie Foul Play, Ready to Take a Chance on Love. And then I did another one called Somewhere in the Night. And then I did the long version of Copacabana. I think Will Lee did the single, because Will did most of Barry's stuff. Oh man, I did. And then I was in Philadelphia doing the Spinners. I did Spinners and Dionne Warwick. That was the first record I did in Philadelphia for Tom Bell, and Tom is a very successful producer, unbelievable, and arranger, keyboard player. In fact, Tom was the one guy. When we had this thing with the Funk Brothers, I think there was something really special. The way people played off each other, and that feeling of being in the room together, the spiritual connection, whatever you want to call it. When I moved to the East Coast, it wasn't hard to find. I mean, it was hard to find that. It was. Once in a while you'd have because sometimes there were so many different combinations of guys.
Right.
And once in a while you'd hit the right combination and the magic would be here and there was a hit record. But when I started working for Tom Bell in Philadelphia, right away I felt that. They had that kind of it's hard for me to explain without using the word connection or spiritual.
Yeah, right.
The magic was there.
Yeah. The fairy
that's
does.
important. Yeah. And well, the name of that record was Then Came You, Dionne Warwick and the Spinners.
Oh, yeah, that was a great one.
And then I did Rubber Band Man with the
Yeah.
Spinners. I did, and we did Elton John.
What'd you do with him?
A big record called Mama Can't Buy You Love. And Tom was a producer, but at that time Tom moved to Seattle. And we actually recorded that in Seattle. There was just so, I mean, and then I started working for Robert Palmer. I did Every Kind of People, which I think was his first top 10 record. And man, whew.
How can you keep up?
I can't. I can't. I can't. It's a, the funny thing about the music business is if you're in the music business and then 10 years go by and you say, whoa, I've been in this business for 10 years. Well, with me, it's like I'd wake up and another 10 years go by.
Right.
And I really felt blessed. First of all, some of the guys that I came up with, they're gone now.
Right.
It's like the Funk Brothers. There's like seven guys that are gone. But the only thing I can say for that is the guys are still here, and thanks to the movie, we're able to keep their names alive.
Well, y'all just got a Grammy this past year.
Yeah, we won 2 Grammys for the soundtrack. One was for the soundtrack, the other one was for Best Traditional R&B Singer, or R&B song, which was Chaka Khan doing What's Going On. And then in this year, 2004, we won a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Grammys. But there's been a lot of other things that came along, little awards, and it's unbelievable. The response from the people still, that they're into the music so much.
Is it funny that you are known better now, I'm assuming, than you were when these records were scorching?
Well, one of the reasons there was that the movie came about in the first place was because the musicians never got credits for a long time. I think up until the Marvin Gaye "What's Going On" album. I mean, there was like I don't know how many 10 years went by there, no credits at all, and as a result. Now again, we didn't see that. We were in Detroit. We're not thinking about that, and but then Detroit's over with. So everybody goes their own ways. I happen to go to the East Coast. That's when it started coming in. The longer we got away from that period, the worse it got. And then you'd run into situations where other people, other musicians, I've been sitting in a studio or a restaurant hearing other musicians talking about, oh yeah, he played on that record, or oh yeah, I said, you gotta be kidding me. I know they didn't. They weren't even in most of it was like with the Motown thing. If you talk to Joe Hunter, he's got one of the greatest stories about going to Chicago and doing some sessions, and they introduced him to a guy up there whose name was Joe Hunter. And he said, are you the Joe Hunter from Detroit? And this guy said, oh yeah. He said, are you the one that did this and played piano? And he said, oh yeah. He says, well, that's funny because that's me.
No kidding.
And then the guy said, well, pulled him aside and said, well, I was just trying to get some work, and
no kidding.
yeah, so things like that happen, and that hurt the most. And Midnight Train to Georgia, when I moved to Nashville, a producer asked me for a little resume, and when I sent it to him, and he called me back and he said, Bob, he says, I see on your resume that you played on Midnight Train to Georgia. I said, yeah. He says, well, that's one of my favorite records, but let me ask you a question. He says, I went out and bought the album, and I don't see your name on it because we didn't get credits.
Right.
I said, well, we didn't get credits. He says, well, how do I know you played on it? So well, you got a good point there. What I did at that time is I actually gave him the phone number of the producer, which I happen to have. And I don't know if he ever called him. I know I never heard from the guy again. But it's hard sometimes. It's like, there's an old saying that you got to see the blood,
Right. That really bites, that somebody in your position would have to give somebody a resume.
Well,
And, it
yeah.
should be common knowledge,
Well, I don't know the reasons or why, but what I respect about a producer is the fact that he sticks by his guys, and you just can't expect to walk into an area and here I am, they've been doing all right without you before.
Point taken, but my point is that they should know who you are from. There should have never been that gap of not knowing who the musicians were on such huge records. You know?
Yeah, well, it was hard. It was hard to you know.
The part in the movie where White did the riff on My Girl.
Yeah, Robert White.
Robert White. That touched me the most of the whole thing, was to see a guy that had done. That was one of the very first songs I learned as a guitar player. You know,
right.
And it was this oftentimes something, especially where you're writing a song, and I guess as far as coming up with a melodic melody like that too. The things that people say, well, oh God, I could have done that, is the hardest thing to do. But I mean, a lot of people can go 90 miles an hour, but to come up with something that's that infectious and that memorable, even to people who are not musical, that's genius. You know, and the part where somebody was saying that he was in a restaurant and My Girl came on the radio,
and he went to start to tell the waiter, but he couldn't do it.
Right, and that's just wrong. Yeah. That's just wrong.
Well, it's hard sometimes, you know. There's a lot of things to consider when something like that happens. One thing is that if people are coming in saying that through the course of the years, and then somebody finds out that they really weren't, then all of a sudden here comes somebody along that actually was there. They don't know whether to believe or not.
Another thing is, and I totally understand this because I've been on all the sides. I know what it's like to be a producer and to be a player and a writer and publishing and all that stuff. And I understand that, you know, no matter how good you are, you can't guarantee every record you play on is going to be My Girl or Signed, Sealed, Delivered.
You're
or whatever.
playing on just as many records that stay on the shelves.
Right. But the thing is when you do come up with something and you are on something magical like that, you don't get any more money than you did for the ones that nobody heard. It didn't matter if it was on the Thriller album. They got their $350 or
whatever
it was,
right.
And you know, and that was it.
Yeah.
And so if you're robbed of your, you know, of the glory of at least being known as the guy that played on this song, which can generate
more work,
right? And then I mean that seems like the least that can be given to the musician, you know.
Right.